And if you've been in our church for probably about, 3 minutes, you've probably heard the phrase church planting. We talk about it a lot. It is part of our DNA. It's half of our vision statement. And we happen to have, as our pastor, probably one of the most passionate people about church planting ever. Am I a little bit loud to anybody else? Yes. Can you turn me down just a little bit? And you hear about church planting all the time, and every now and then we go through a series on church planting, and we're in the middle of one right now as well. And typically it goes something like this. Jason takes a few weeks off. We bring in a bunch of church planters, and we bring in other pastors, and they come and they talk about church planting. And I challenged him a while back because it started to feel to me a little bit like take your kid to work day. Because I come to church, and I'm hearing about church planting from church planters and from pastors, from people whose vocational ministry it is to do church planting. And I'm kind of going, well, I'm a computer programmer. I sit in front of a computer for 40 hours a week. I don't talk to anybody, and I solve puzzles. I mean, this is my daily grind. And so I start to wonder, why am I don't understand how this connects with me. So every year, if you guys don't know this, the elders get together and we kind of plan out what we're going to do over the next year. We plan out goals that we want for the next year. And I'm sorry, can you turn me down just a little bit more? And we plan out what we're doing for the year. And when we plan out what we're doing for the year, we always try to find goals, because any good organization should have goals that are aligned with the vision statement of that organization. And our vision statement is that we would bring people far from God into a gospel-centered relationship with Jesus Christ, and that we would plant 100 churches in the Houston area within 25 years. And as I started thinking about it more, I said, Jason, I don't know how many people are actually connecting with this part of the vision statement. I often feel like it is, Jason is doing the church planting thing, and the rest of us are kind of along for the ride. And I said, if we want people on board with church planting, we have to be able to communicate to them how they are part of the process. And so a couple of weeks later, he asks me to teach on church planting, and my first reaction was, no, I'm not a church planter. But then he said, that's why I want you to teach on church planting. I want you to teach on church planting because you are a layperson. You don't do this vocationally. And I think there's a value, and I agree with him, I think there's a value sometimes in somebody who's not in an official capacity communicating something that they might not have a direct impact on, but are a part of nevertheless. So kind of my goal this morning is, for those of you who are out there kind of scratching your head going, I don't understand how I'm part of this church planting. I don't see it. I mean, I see the church planters come into our church, and then they are sent out, and I understand that. But my plan is to be planted here at this church. I like this church. I don't have a plan to move unless God tells me otherwise. For the rest of us, what's our role? What do we play? How do we fit into this whole picture? So this morning we're going to talk about that. When we were talking on the phone about when he had first asked me to teach, and we were talking on the phone, he said something that kind of sparked something in my mind. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, I'm a trained biblical counselor. I was trained last year online, a series of videos and that kind of thing. And one of the series of videos that I watched was by a guy named David Tripp, Paul David Tripp. I believe he has 3 names. And Paul Tripp has a series, it's called Your Walk with God is a Community Project. And this phrase came into my mind as we were talking. Because, and I think this is foundational. I think foundational understanding what role you play is understanding what church planting actually is at its core. First off, we have to understand that as Christians, we cannot walk alone. I often do sound, and I get the privilege of putting a few songs into the playlist that we listen to at the end and the beginning of the service. And one of the songs I put in there was by a band named Colony House. It's called Cannot Do This Alone. And the whole point of the song is like, look, I can't do the Christian life on my own. I can't do this by myself. How many of you guys like nature shows? Yeah? Everybody likes a good nature show, right? And in every single nature show, they have the exact same scene. Every one of them. You've got a flock of very cute animals. and then you have a few mean animals. And the mean animals are going after the cute animals, and they start, they're prowling a little bit under the brush a little bit, and then all of a sudden they just break out into a run. The whole flock just starts going. It's like 3 predators against 400 or something other animals. What is their strategy? What do they always try to do? Does anybody know? Pick out the weakest. How do they do it? Isolate. They peel the weakest off, and they isolate the weakest, and then once they isolate the weakest, they can take them down. This is a foundational thing to understand if you're going to understand churches and church planting and church community and Christian community. When you became a Christian, God's best goal for your life is not that you would be like, all right, I'm saved, move on like normal, I'm not going to go talk to people. There's a trend, and occasionally you'll hear people say this, where they'll be like, well, I'm a Christian, I don't go to church though. I'm a Christian, I believe in the Bible, I believe in Jesus, but I have trouble with the church and I don't believe in the church, so I'm not going to go. And that is just a self-defeating statement. You cannot live the Christian life on your own. And I think the thing that needs to be impressed in our minds, and I know I'm preaching, we don't have a choir here, but if so, I'd be preaching the choir, because you guys are here. The thing that we have to keep in mind is when we start to leave the church and go out on our own, we are being isolated. It is not us who's choosing, hey, let's just go. I mean, it's partly that, but it is also partly the design of the devil to move you out of community and get you isolated so he can attack you. When we recognize it like that, we're like, oh, I need to stay in the flock. And if this isn't your church home and you decide to go to another church home, that's fine. The important thing is, as believers, we need to be in a congregation. We need to be among other believers. Hebrews 10:25 says, do not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day here. Paraphrase. Not neglecting to be together as is habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. We are to continue encouraging one another. We can't do it alone. Next, the local church might be simpler than you think it is. All right, so shout out a few churchy things that you think of. When you think of church, what do you think of? Sacraments, choir, dogma, pastors, maybe, children's ministry, worship ministry, Sunday morning meetings, Bible studies, theology. You've got donuts and coffee. And, you've got all of these things that are the kind of the trappings of the churchiness that we think of, the structure and the organization of church. And I think a lot of times, and I think especially this is true a lot of times when the only people you hear about church planting are from church planters, they're building organizations, they're trying to build communities, but they're also building organizations, because in our society, a community, honestly, it kind of exists best within the organizational structure that we've kind of got set up. That's why churches are successful set up in this kind of structure, right? You have to have somebody who organizes people together. You have to have somebody who plans to get people together. You have these, and so then you also provide these other things. But that at its core is not the church. The church is not the children's ministry. The church is not the worship ministry. The church is not the pastor. The church is the community that is within the organization. So you might want to write this down. Organization versus community is a key distinction. Because you can have an organization without having any community. And you can actually have community and have a pretty loose organization. When we're talking about church planting, we're talking about planting communities of believers. Finding a way to place in another community area a community of believers so that those who become Christians and realize they cannot do it alone have a place to go, to be encouraged, to fellowship with other believers. It's a community of believers. So some churches, they may have a structure of elders. Some churches may have a structure of a single pastor. Some churches may be a more loosely defined organization because, frankly, that might work for them. I don't fully understand that. I think some leadership is necessary in any organization. But we're talking primarily about creating communities of believers to be together. If I think about planting a whole lot of organizations, I'm kind of an anti-organizational kind of person. I kind of am. I don't think that way. I'm not organized. Never have been. That's why I have my wife. But I do like community, and I like being part of a community, and I need to be part of a community, and I need people around me who can be strong when I'm weak. I need people around me that I can be strong for when they're weak. I need to be part of a community. So at its core, when we're talking about church plan, we're talking about planting a community. And so with those couple of things in mind, I want to add another point. I think those are kind of the foundational understandings that I have of church planning. It's to plant other communities, and that's a good thing because you have to do that in order to be able to spread the gospel. You have to have communities. Next, good ministries help plant churches. So this has been a struggle for me. I grew up in church, and most of the churches I grew up in, we would hear a lot about international missions. I grew up in one of those larger churches where everything was international missions. We would have our missions. Our missions thing every year where the sanctuary would be decorated with every single flag under the sun. We would sing songs from different cultures, and there was a bunch of people who basically looked like me singing a whole bunch of songs from different cultures. Great, that's good. But I felt like it was this big missions thing, and I would get excited about that because there's something about looking outside your window going, God has this plan that people of every tongue, tribe, and nation would be together. Would be together singing to him and singing praises to him. And in eternity, we're going to be standing side by side with people who don't share our language, don't look like us. And that's a good thing. That's an amazing thing. So when I think of churches a lot of times, church planting, when I first started hearing about it and I started thinking through it, I was like, this seems almost narrow in scope. Why would we do church planting versus, say, international missions? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons why. One, guys, we live in the international city right now. The diversity in Houston is more than that of New York. God has brought the nations to our doorstep. If we plant churches in Houston, we will be planting some, I'm certain of it, international churches. There will be people that will hear about Christ when they come to Houston, and they may go back to their home country or wherever, and they'll bring him with them and maybe plant churches over there. Churches that are planted in the Houston area have the strong capability and are probably more likely than churches planted in other areas of the country of reaching the world. So there's this jumping off point with our churches here. Somehow this is back. Good ministries help plant churches. So why is this good ministries plant churches? I'm kind of going off on a tangent. I'm sorry, guys. That's what I do. Any good ministry that you follow is going to try, as part of its goal, to get people plugged into the church. So one of the ministries that Jennifer and I really like is called IJM, International Justice Mission. What they do is they go out and they right wrongs. It's basically this giant group of Christian attorneys, international attorneys, and they go out and they find people who are in sex slavery, in ridiculous debt situations where their children are having to work 18 hours a day to try and pay off a debt on which the interest is so high that they will never get to pay it off, so they're essentially slaves. And these guys will go out there and they will find the people doing these offenses, they will put them behind bars, but then they also have more than that. It's not that they just, arrest the offenders and move on. They have an aftercare program. And in their aftercare program, they help those who've been oppressed and they help those who've been in these situations find legitimate work, find how to survive in a regular way. They also share the gospel with them. And they also help them get connected with churches. They help them get connected in a larger community of believers once they are believers, so that they can grow, so that they can pour into others, so that they can know how to live the Christian life. So if you're supporting a ministry, chances are you're supporting a church planting ministry in some sense, even if it's somewhat circumspect and it comes around the back end of church planting. They're building into churches because they're building into people who then go into churches. If you're a children's minister here, or I guess we only have one children's minister, but if you're in the children's ministry here, and you're part of you give of your time, or if you're in the worship ministry or tech ministry or hospitality or whatever, you are helping to build churches. You're helping to plant churches because you're creating an environment that's favorable for people who are looking for a church environment. You're helping to build the church. These people are going to go out, and if they have a favorable experience at City View, when they move or when they go somewhere else, they're going to go to another church. It's going to help build another church. We plant churches. You are planting churches by doing that. Evangelism inherently plants churches. I don't know if you guys grew up in this, but I kind of felt like when I was growing up that we're going to tell you about Jesus, we're going to get you saved, you're good to go. We're done. All right, have a good day. Put a Bible study if you'd like, here's the Bible. And that's about it. Evangelism should inherently plant churches. A lot of you guys live here. Most of you guys live around here, but a lot of you work in Houston or work down in Freeport or work in Baytown or in other areas of the city. And if you tell somebody about Christ and that person accepts Christ, the very next thing you ought to be doing is helping them find a local community of believers. If I worked downtown and I had a friend who was in Spring and I told him about Christ and he became a Christian, I'm not going to be like, great, come to City View, man. He's going to go, I'm going to have to drive an hour and a half to get there. I'm not going to City View. Don't ask your friend from Spring to come to City View with you if they become a believer and you work downtown. Send them to Joe's church. If they're in Baytown, send them to, Guy Glass's church is out there? Chris Bradford's church is out there. Send them to one of these other churches. Help build those churches by sending those believers to churches in their communities and in their neighborhoods. Because then they'll be able to help to build the community of believers in that neighborhood and in that place. Evangelism inherently plants churches. There's strength in numbers. So this one goes a little bit more to the methods of why Jennifer and I joined here. When we came to City View, we came to City View because we wanted to be part of a church plant and we wanted to be in at the ground level on the very first day, which we were not here on the very first day. And I still regret not being here the very first day. We were here the second week. And I'm still upset that we weren't here the first day. But we wanted to be part of the ground level. We wanted to see the church grow. We wanted to know we were part of this. We wanted to see us grow from this small group of people to hopefully a large church, a thriving church that's moving forward and doing the work of God. And we walked straight into a church planting monster. I mean, Jason is a church planting monster. We walked straight into this church, and I didn't understand it. I didn't hear the word church planting until I met this guy, to be honest. And a couple of things that I noticed about it was I started to get a little bit concerned with, I'm going to say this very carefully. Let me put this out here. There is nothing wrong with a large church. There is nothing wrong with a church being large. In fact, if a church is doing well, chances are the church is going to grow. That is going to be a thing that's going to happen. I don't really want City View. Honestly, I hope that 5 years from now we have more people 5 years from now than we have right now. I think that would be a wonderful and fantastic thing. My concern at times has been when kind of the bigger they are, the harder they fall kind of thing. When you have a large organization that is led by one very highly visible person or a couple of very highly visible people, if something should happen to one of those people, the organization struggles more deeply than if it is a smaller organization that is led by a group of people. Or it struggles more than many organizations among which one or two leaders something has happened to. Does that make sense? Church planting is very resilient. If I go out and if we plant other churches and other smaller communities, and there are a lot of small communities around Houston, then should something happen to one of those communities or another community, there's another community nearby that people can go to. You're not kind of like, oh man. And I'm reminded of this, like there was a church in Seattle that this kind of happened to. I mean, the church imploded. The pastor there was a lot of scandal and all this kind of stuff, and the church imploded, and they had campus after campus after campus after campus, and all of their campuses shuttered. And it was just one of those situations where it's like, it's a horrible thing when that happens to any church, but it's worse when it's a larger, bigger organization because it impacts more people on the whole. There's a resilience. One of the things you guys are going to hear about in the upcoming weeks, we're kind of changing our life group schedules a little bit. We've had our life group schedule has generally been like, we start sometime in August and we just kind of finish sometime in May. And it's just kind of like straight through. Let's see how many times we can meet. But we're going to change it up a little bit. In January and February, we're going to have men's group and women's group. And the men are going to get together and we're going to talk about things. And then there's going to be, the women are going to get together, they're going to talk about things. We're going to try and find a common location to do this. But one of the things when we were talking about this, one of the things that I really appreciated about it was I felt like this would give an opportunity that we hadn't had before, which is most of our life groups right now they're kind of separated into stages. You've got kind of a feel and a culture to each life group. You've got the empty nesters, we've got the youth life group, we've got a couple of life groups that have a few kids, we've got one that seems to have a few more kids, and then one that seems to have a few less kids, then we've got the people out in Friendswood, and it's like, we've got all these different life groups, but we're all kind of like the same within the life group. And I'm thinking, one of the things that I really value is when I can sit down with somebody who is nothing like me and hear their perspective. Because the general flow of life goes like this. You're born, you get to be about, in your teen years or whatever, and you're all excited. You have your whole life ahead of you. Like, you've got probably 80 or 100 more years, right? You're 20. Why not make it to 120? And then you're so excited, and everything is wide open, and you've got all these ideas, all these fresh new thoughts of this wonderful things that you're going to do. You're going to revolutionize this, you're going to revolutionize that, and then you get a little bit older. Life beats you down a little bit, and you're in the thick of it. You got your kids. I'm thinking about that song, 100 Years. It always makes it, I don't know if you guys have heard that. Anyway, makes my wife cry. But you're in your 40s, and you got your kids, and you're busy with that and all this kind of stuff. And then you're 60, your kids are gone. Your perspective on life has changed. I read something this morning that Bill Gates used to ask this question when he woke up, which was, I'm a computer geek, that's why I showed up on my feed. He used to ask this question, how much money has Microsoft made? Or how has Microsoft made PC computing better? That's what he used to ask when he was in his 20s. Now the questions that he asks is, how much time have I spent with my family? How many new friendships have I made? How many old friendships have I deepened? And how many new things have I learned this year? Like those are the change from like 20 to 60. Young people need the wisdom of older people. Older people need the energy of young people. And those of us who are in the middle just need everybody. Babysitting, I'll be signing up over there. And I'm talking about people here, but I think the same is true when you're talking about churches. Because the same general thing happens as a church ages. You start out new, you've got these new ideas, you're trying all this new, unusual thing, and then as the church grows, you get a little more kind of set in your ways. This is how we do it. This is what our culture is. This is how we're going to approach this topic and that topic. If a church is planting other churches, though, then they're in community with other younger churches who are in their experimental phase when they're young. They're trying new things. They're trying different things. And the older churches can kind of look at it and go, it seems to be working for them. Maybe we should see about incorporating that here. But then the younger churches likewise can look at churches that have been established or a couple of steps ahead and go, what have they learned? Are we making the same? We don't want to make the same mistakes that they made. So we're going to do this instead. So there's that exchange of energy and wisdom that happens as churches are planted, as churches grow. If we stayed in one community and we never planted a church, we would, I guarantee you, we would eventually become stagnant. We would become tired. And I think here's one thing about why church planting, I think we favor that more than focusing, say, on world missions or whatever. It's very easy with world missions focus to throw some money at it and feel like, I've done something. Doesn't necessarily impact your heart, doesn't necessarily change you, but you can say, yeah, I went on this one-week mission trip, which is great. You get an opportunity to do it. I can't recommend it highly enough. But when that's the only focus, it can begin to you're kind of shortchanging yourself. When you're church planting, and you're helping to plant churches, and you're sending people out from your congregation, and you're sacrificing people from within the congregation to go somewhere else, it forces the people in that congregation and in the new congregation to grow. It creates growth in the Christian life, and that can only be seen as a good thing. New churches represent the diversity of the kingdom. I would love it. I mean, I'll be honest. I would love it if we had people in this congregation from every single background possible. I would love it. But as it turns out, people tend to gather in groups of people that are kind of like them. And it's something that annoys me because I would love to have a perfectly balanced demographic group in our church that's perfectly representative of Pearland. We're not perfectly representative of Pearland. I would love to have that. But again, as it turns out, people tend to like to gather, birds of a feather flock together. It just tends to be that way in reality. Planting new churches gives us an opportunity not only to share fellowship with those who are otherwise not like us, with whom the only thing we really have in common might be Christ. But it also helps to create new cultures of believers, groups of believers that are uniquely designed to reach certain kinds of people in a community. That's a good thing. It's a good thing when a church can reach this person. If one church over there can't reach this person, maybe our church can reach them. And the more churches that you have, the more ability that the Christian church as a whole, the universal church as a whole, has to reach more people. We should be planting churches, that are completely different than us, and I think we have, and I think it's good. The personalities of all the churches that we've planted so far are vastly different. And Nate just left to go plant another church. It's going to look vastly different than ours. That's good. That's a good thing. New churches reflect the diversity of the kingdom. And lastly, if you care for another soul, you care about church planting. You cannot care for the soul of another person on an eternal perspective without caring and not care if they plug into community or not. Going back to what we were saying at the very beginning, church is simpler than you think it is. It is a community of believers. And if you say you care about a person eternally, and you want to tell them about Christ, and yet you don't help them get plugged in, you don't help them build a new community of believers that's near them, which would be a church, then you don't really care about the person's soul. If you care about the soul of the person, if you care about their soul, you care about church planting. I don't have any kind of a fancy conclusion. I'm a computer programmer. I put the points out. I'll let you guys weigh them and think about them however you want. I also don't want to spend too much time because I know we probably have food on the way. I never really like it when pastors go long when there's food on the way. So I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then I think who's going to give instructions about the Lindley will come back up. So I'm going to pray, and Lindley's going to come back up.